Hi folks, I'm landscape designer John Holden here in Newtown, Connecticut, and today we're doing a spring edge and mulch in these gardens. I've got some other videos of the steps involved, but right now I want to talk a little bit about just a light pruning in the spring while you're weeding and freshening the mulch in your gardens. A lot of people will only prune their shrubs once a year, usually in June or July. They'll get the electric hedge clippers out and just make a ball out of all the shrubs. I'm not a very big fan of that, but I'm also a big fan of pruning a little bit at a time through the year as opposed to doing it all at once. Now there's always going to be exceptions, but right now I'd just like to walk you through this garden we're working at right here and show you some of the minor pruning we can do. Doesn't take much time, but that's going to make a big difference in keeping your garden under control and looking its best. Whenever you're working in the garden and you see any dead branches, you want to just go ahead and clip them right out. You want to make room for that new growth to come. Try to look in and go all the way back until you see some live growth. This double file viburnum is very beautiful, but it's growing right on top of these blue star junipers. Now eventually we may end up moving these blue stars, but for now we're just going to cut this viburnum back a little bit to let some more light get to the junipers. We're not really trying to do some wholesale pruning, just very lightly pruning so you almost can't even tell what we did. Should be a good start. This boxwood doesn't really need a major pruning, but what I try to do whenever I'm working in gardens is to just prune a little bit at a time with my hand pruners, not my shears. So what I'll do is I'll just go through the shrub and just cut back some of the really long branches. It's just a light shaping of the shrub, anything that's really sticking out, and we'll just kind of get the shrub back in bounds and get it ready to keep growing through the season with a nice tight habit. When I'm doing this pruning, I'm trying not to prune everything right on the edge of the shrub. I try to cut it back a little bit. And what that's going to do is by cutting it back and into the shrub a touch, is it's going to give the shrub a more tiered look and a less formal look, which is the look I usually go for in my gardens. In the back I've got a little bit of the viburnum growing into the boxwood, so we'll cut that out too. We're not looking to prune everything right now, just a little bit. It's really up to you to decide how far you want to go. Whenever I've got an evergreen shrub with no flowers, if I see really sticking out branches, I'll cut those off. If it's a flowering shrub or a fruiting shrub and I've got a branch that's really sticking out, I'll cut that off. But there are some definite rules to pruning, so I won't go too heavy unless I'm very sure what I'm pruning. Now what we've got going on here is there's this ground cover juniper and it's growing over the sidewalk. Now what you could do is you could wait until June to prune it, but it might be halfway across the sidewalk by then. So we'll just go ahead and cut that back. And when I'm cutting it back, I try not to cut a line again. What I'll do is I'll cut some a little bit over the walk and some back maybe 3 or 4 inches from the walk. and it leaves a very natural look to it. So it doesn't look like I just hacked away at this poor shrub. This guy did have quite a few weeds in it last year, so we're waiting for it to kind of pop this spring. But with your ground covers, if we let this guy go for a few years without nipping it a little bit, it's going to be way over the sidewalk, and then by the time we do cut it, the wood is going to be so thick and it's going to be so overgrown, it's going to be very obvious that it was pruned. So with your junipers, if you have a spreading yew, there's a plant I use called Katonah Aster. It's always good in the spring to just go through and give it a light pruning to get it back in shape. And you don't want to just make a line, kind of zigzag your cuts, a little in, a little out. And that's about what we're going for. You can barely even tell I cut that. This lace leaf Japanese maple is growing down to the ground and touching the ground. If that's the look you're going for, it's perfectly fine. I personally prefer to have the lace leaf maples 6 to 8 inches above the ground so air and light can get under there. It also, if you leave it like that, sometimes when you clean your leaves up, they'll all get caught underneath. So what I'll do is I'll come through in the spring and very carefully cut a little bit of the lower branches from the bottom so you can barely even tell that they were cut. I'll try to cut just beyond where another branch hits the stem, and this is also a good chance this branch is starting to get close to the sidewalk to keep the Japanese maple where we want it to be. But we'll just get under and clean that up a little bit. Let air and light underneath and keep it from growing out of bounds. And it's amazing that no matter how much you take, within limits, the trees are always going to come back and they're always going to look better. You know, if it's your first time, you don't have to be super aggressive, but eventually it is going to come back. The other thing I'll do with these lace leaves is if there's any branches on top that just really take off going up, I'll go ahead and cut them back to where the weep is. This tree looks perfectly fine, I'm not going to touch it. But that's one other thing to look at. Thanks a lot for watching the video today, folks. If you're watching me on YouTube and you have any questions about gardening, please feel free to post them below the video. And if you'd like some more tips and tricks about gardening, please visit my blog at landdesigns.com. As always, folks, thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and happy gardening.